Supreme Court affirms Kano, Sokoto, Bauchi governorship elections. PDP leaders' supporters protest against Supreme Court ruling on Imo governorship election. In international news, coffins of 11 Ukrainian victims of Tehran plane crash arrive in Kiev. And in sport, NFF, Raw set aside fresh contract talks.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatuji. The Supreme Court has ruled earlier today that Abdullahi Ganduje is a substantive and duly elected governor of Kano State. It dismissed the appeal filed by the PDP and its candidate Abba Yusuf. The unanimous judgment was read by Justice Nwali Nguta, saying the facts presented did not support the appeal, which was predicated on a single ground. The PDP had argued that the returning officer had cancelled results in 207 polling units and declared the election inconclusive. The Supreme Court also dismissed for lack of merit the appeal of the All Progressives Congress and its candidate Ahmed Aliyu, challenging PDP candidate Aminu Tambuwa as governor of Sokoto State. Justice Abba Aji held that the appellant Aliyu failed to give any credible evidence to prove his petition against the outcome of the governorship election. The court ruled that the APC produced 12 witnesses before the tribunal, out of which 11 made their statements in Hausa language, while the English version was tendered in evidence. The court further held that Aliyu also failed to produce the translator to confirm the authenticity or otherwise of the 11 statements. The justices held that the appellant was unable to prove that the election was invalid by virtue of non-compliance with the Electoral Act. Leaders of the People's Democratic Party, including the People's National Chairman, Uche Secondas, former Governor Peter Obi, Senate Minority Leader Erinaya Baribe, Achike Udenwa, former Minister of Aviation, Osita Chidoke, Dino Melaye, were staunch supporters staged a protest on Abuja streets over the recent verdict of the Supreme Court that sacked one of its governors, Emeka Ihedioha. The party's national chairman, Uche Secondas, says the aim of the protest, themed #Save Our Judiciary, was to impress on Nigerians that injustice has been done to the party. The Supreme Court nullified last Tuesday the electoral victory of Emeka Ihedioha, the PDP Imo State 2019 governorship candidate. The protesters walked to the National Assembly and met with the leadership of the Red Chamber. A 5-man committee has been set up by Ekiti State Governor Kayode Fayemi to look into the ongoing crisis among members and leadership of the National Union of Local Government Employees. The committee is to advise the government on how to resolve the succession crisis rocking the union. It is headed by Chairman, Local Government Service Commission, Chief Samuel Abejide. Fayemi made the disclosure when he met with the chairman and directors of administration and finance of the 16 local government areas in the state. The governor says the committee is expected to submit its report within a week. It is to undertake a holistic approach to harmonize all the stakeholders within Norge and its environs. It would also pay specific attention to remote causes of the crisis and advise government on how best to tackle them. Fayemi says it would not allow labor matters to degenerate and discredit his government. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has sent a strong warning to pipeline vendors who cause untold hardship to Lagosians while breaking the law. The governor was reacting to Sunday's fire outbreak at Abule Egba area of Lagos. The State Emergency Management Agency, LASEMA, said the fire claimed 3 lives, several people were injured, many houses were razed.
Our emergency response is well coordinated, is effective, and is efficient. And you can see all around that all the key stakeholders are performing their roles and responsibilities without any form of infraction.
We are the first to be here. We have more than enough is not enough. You know when something happens now, you have the crowd. So if you the president of police now that control the crowd, even the fire service that came, no one has gotten access to do anything.
See, we
we are hoping and counting on Nigerians to help us resolve this, because this is a major national security concern. But for us, we are very happy also that we have restored the line after the break. We shut down the line to contain the damage that it can cause. But now we are back on stream. Petroleum products are flowing from all the way from Atlas Corp to Ilori as we speak now.
Full cashless operations at the Lekki Ikoyi toll starts today. Cash is no longer accepted at the toll booths, and defaulters would be liable for a penalty of 1,000 naira. Lagos State Commissioner for Transportation Dr. Frederick Oladende said in a statement the full implementation had become necessary to remove bottlenecks at the toll gate and impact positively on the reduction of traffic queue length and journey time for Lagos residents. He also warned against all corrupt practices, including photocopying payment vouchers for multiple usage or presenting fake e-payment devices. The commissioner says e-tax are free to obtain and they are widely available. Coming up, African stories. World leaders agree to strengthen arms embargo on Libya. And later, international news. Kiev receives coffins of 11 nationals killed in Iran in the downed Ukrainian Airlines jet.
it up.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. World leaders that attended the summit in Berlin on the conflict in Libya have agreed to more strictly enforce the UN arms embargo. German leader Angela Merkel, who hosted the summit, said a new spirit had been created to find a lasting solution to the conflict. Reporter Ira Spitzer has the details.
Some of the world's most powerful figures descended on Berlin. The goal, to push forward stalled peace talks among Libya's rival factions. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said she'd extracted commitments to reduce the flow of weapons into the country.
A political solution must be upheld to maintain peace in the following work, and arms should be embargoed to Libya. The war in Libya is now a proxy one. We hope to change the current situation and give the Libyan people the self-determination right to return to freedom and peace.
The North African country has become a flashpoint for competing interests from outside forces. Turkey has supported the UN-backed government, which controls the capital Tripoli and little else. But Russia, the United Arab Emirates, and Egypt back rebels led by General Khalifa Haftar. Rich in oil and gas resources and a hub for irregular migrant flows to Europe, Libya is strategically important for a number of countries.
Now we were facing the risk of a true regional escalation. And that risk was averted in Berlin, provided, of course, that it is possible to maintain the truce and then to move into a ceasefire.
But the elusive ceasefire wasn't agreed to in Berlin, just as it wasn't in Moscow last week. And the two rival factions didn't even meet face to face. With the recent escalations, there are worries time could be running out for a peaceful solution.
A summit in Lome, Togo's capital, where 7 African leaders and their partners were present on Saturday, has yielded an agreement to criminalize trafficking of fake drugs on the continent. The leaders agreed to take this step to tackle the menace that affects more than 100,000 persons in sub-Saharan Africa. One of the leaders, Togolese President Faria Gasnange, said Africa must take its destiny in its own hands and engage in the fight against this deadly traffic. The leaders are now expected to get their government to work toward the establishment of a framework agreement extended to other African countries with a roadmap to put an end to the menace of drug trafficking. Retrenchments in South Africa's banking sector remain a concern as the big 4 banks in the country assess the number of staff as well as branch infrastructure. Thousands of jobs could be at stake. Angela Coppola reports from Johannesburg.
The banking sector is depressed when it comes to valuations compared to banking sectors in other emerging markets, which is good news for investors.
South African banks remain profitable in their own right and substantially profitable relative to balance sheet. So I would venture that it's the mood, more than anything, that's driving valuation on South African banks.
While that may be an opportunity for investors, staff are feeling the pressure because technology is beginning to turn the traditional business banking model on its head.
It's all about automation, and really it's around jobs being replaced by RPA processes. The thing is that these processes don't just start immediately. Banks obviously focus on optimization and efficiencies, and so they've been setting up processes, and they have a plan, a strategic plan. And of course there's alternatives, but the workplace of the future, it's interesting that with AI and automation, there's actually more jobs that will be created than jobs taken away.
Added to that, there are new entrants that are starting to vie for market share.
The displacement, the dislocation comes out of the technology cluster, where it's not other banks that are competing for share of market, but entirely new ventures, different industries that are giving birth to competition. So that has given the retail banking industry a substantial shake.
The local financial services worker union, SASPO, has been fighting the banks over planned retrenchments and branch closures. They are currently in the courts, trying to stop those job losses.
In an environment of unionization, it's a very sensitive topic, and so everyone has to be on the same page in terms of automation, what the workplace looks like. And I think it's a responsibility that lies not just with the business, which is banks in this case, but lies with the unions and lies with the employees. Everyone's got to take responsibility for what do we need to do to be relevant in the future.
As banks continue to watch their costs, it's probably very likely that there are going to be more retrenchments sooner rather than later, especially with those new competitors coming in.
When we return, international news. Kiev receives coffins of 11 nationals killed in Iran. And later, sport. Nigeria Football Federation, RAW, set aside fresh contract talks. Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the foreign scene, the coffins of 11 Ukrainians have arrived in Kiev on Sunday. They were killed when Iran's military mistakenly shot down a passenger airliner after takeoff from Tehran's international airport. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, Prime Minister Volodymyr Onychuruk, and other senior Ukrainian officials took part in a solemn ceremony after the 11 flag-draped coffins arrived in the Ukrainian capital. They were carrying the bodies of 9 Ukrainian international airline crew members and 2 passengers. They died along with 165 others when their plane was shot down 12 days ago. Iranian officials have said the plane was unintentionally shut down, but air defenses were on high alert during heightened tensions with the United States. Ukrainians and officials from 4 other countries, the lost nationals in the disaster, have demanded a thorough, independent and transparent investigation. Senior Iranian officials have called for the punishment of those responsible for shooting down the plane. Foreign ministers of Afghanistan, Britain, Canada, Sweden and Ukraine issued a joint statement after a meeting in London on Saturday to pressure Iran to give a full accounting. Most of the victims on the flight were Iranians or dual citizens, many of them students returning to study abroad or families returning home after visiting relatives in Iran. The U.S. Senate is set to kick off the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump on Tuesday. There are squabbles already over the trial. Criminal defense lawyer Alan Devashkis, who is one of the team of lawyers defending Trump, said on CNN on Sunday he will tell the 100 members of the Senate who are acting as jurors deciding Trump's fate that even if the factors presented are true, it would not rise to the level of impeachment to convict Trump and oust him from office. The lawmakers will be deciding whether Trump committed high crimes and misdemeanors, a constitutional standard for removing a president from office. As the trial nears, the Republican majority Senate remains highly unlikely to convict Trump, also a Republican, since a 2/3 vote against Trump would be necessary to oust him from the White House. Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, leader of 7 House of Representative managers prosecuting the case against Trump, told ABC News on Sunday the Republicans have not debunked the fact that the president withheld hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid to an ally at war with Russia, and that he withheld a White House meeting that the president of Ukraine desperately sought to establish with his country. He said Trump withheld the aid in order to force Ukraine to help him cheat in the next election. On Saturday, both the House lawmakers pushing for Trump's conviction and Trump's defenders filed legal arguments in the case. The first stage of an extradition hearing for a senior executive of Chinese telecom giant Huawei begins today, Monday, in Vancouver, Canada. The case has angered Beijing and has also set up a diplomatic furor and raised fears of a brewing tech war between China and the United States. Beijing expressed great shock when Canada arrested Huawei's chief financial officer, Meng Wanzhou in late 2018 at the behest of the U.S. Huawei represents China's ambitions to become a technological power that has been the subject of U.S. security concerns for years. Beijing views Meng's case as an attempt to stunt China's technological growth. Washington accuses Huawei of using a Hong Kong shell company to sell equipment to Iran in violation of U.S. sanctions. It says Meng, 47, committed fraud by misleading HSBC Bank about the company's business dealings in Iran. Meng, who is free on bail and living in one of the 2 Vancouver mansions she owns, denies the allegation. Her defense team has pointed to comments by U.S. President Donald Trump they say suggest the case against her is politically motivated. Huawei is the biggest global supplier of network gear for cell phone and internet companies. Washington has pressured other countries to limit use of its technology, warning they could be opening themselves up to surveillance and theft. Up next, sports. NFF, Raw, set aside fresh contract talks. Please stay with us.
There is more within. Turn it up.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. The General Secretary of Nigeria Football Federation, Dr. Sanusi Mohammed, has revealed the contract talks between the Federation and Super Eagles coach Geno Bro has been put on hold to enable the two parties focus on the upcoming 2021 Africa Cup of Nations and Qatar 2022 World Cup qualifiers in March. Sanusi said the qualifiers were so important that the NFF would not allow the contract issue to distract the football house from its ultimate task of qualifying for both tournaments. And the NFF is also set to name a new coach for the Super Falcons by the end of the month. Sanusi hinted that a new head coach would be announced before next month's West Africa Football Union Women's Cup of Nations to be held in Sierra Leone. Sanusi said the girls are experienced, but they also need a good leader to collaborate their experiences. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.